Hello, everyone. I am the Comics Kid 2099, and I am joined by Connor Nielsen. Connor, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well this fine Labor Day. How are you doing, Comics Kid?
I'm doing also very well. And we are talking about an episode of 21 Jump Street, the TV series that you chose. Normally, we talk about movies and TV shows and stuff with Twin Peaks alumni after we talked about just about everything Twin Peaks related. And you chose this because of the actress Robin Lively, who was in about half of season 2 of Twin Peaks. So why don't you tell us a little bit about this episode of 21 Jump Street titled Mike's POV?
Mike's POV, I believe, is the ninth episode of season 4 of the television series 21 Jump Street. Famously, the show starred Johnny Depp, but his co-lead was Peter DeLuise, I believe is the actor's name. Those are the only two of the series regulars that actually show up in this episode because this also features Holly Robinson, Dustin Nguyen, and Steve Williams, who don't actually appear in this episode, I don't believe. I think this is actually a unique, unconventional episode because the actual main character is the titular Mike, not to be confused with Mike from Twin Peaks or the other Mike from Twin Peaks. But this is a guy named Mike, played by Donovan Leitch, and he is kind of the weird kid. He has a crush on Robin Lively, as I'm sure anybody going to high school in the late 80s, early 90s did. And he shoots the wife of a teacher as with a ski mask at the beginning of the episode. And throughout the episode, you start figuring out why he did this, who paid him to do it, and kind of his social status within the school. He ends up sort of befriending one of the undercover cops, played by Peter DeLuise, and he sort of has a bit of a anger towards Johnny Depp because he's just too handsome. So I did not really know anything about 21 Jump. Oh, I guess I should probably say this television show, the premise. I'm sure a lot of people are aware of the premise because of the 2012-2014 comedy films 21 Jump Street and 22 Jump Street, starring Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum. But the premise is it is about adults who are young and sexy, and they pose as undercover cops in high school to stop high school crimes. So this is, I guess, a different episode. From what I understand, the usual formula is you're in on the investigation with Johnny Depp and Peter DeLuise and Holly Robinson and Dustin Nguyen and all these people. So this is kind of from the villain's POV. Comics Kid, I don't think you've ever watched an episode of 21 Jump Street. What did you think of this episode?
That's correct. I've never watched an episode. I've also never seen either of the movies. I've heard that they're okay. I am not a big fan of Jonah Hill or Channing Tatum, so that's kind of a turnoff for me. I was aware that the premise was police officers infiltrating high school. I'm assuming that each episode of the series, they're infiltrating a different high school. I would think eventually they would run out of high schools because generally like a police unit is located in a town. But if they're going to different high schools each episode, like eventually I think they'd have to move to another state or something. But I think this episode was maybe okay. I think there are a few like really odd choices the episode makes. This is probably not a good introduction to the lore of 21 Jump Street. I think if you were like me and you knew nothing about this series, you should probably have watched any other episode before watching this. I think if you are a fan of 21 Jump Street and you've watched like 3 seasons and then you get to this, you're probably like, oh, cool, this is different. This is very, it's off the beaten path from what we usually do. But just watching this by itself, at times I was kind of bored. At times I was very uncomfortable. And overall, like, I think it could have worked, but like I said, there were a few things that I found to be really weird about the presentation of this story. But I did have a couple of like weird notes. This is I watched the episode once through, and then I went back to kind of like make my notes because I was like, the structure of this episode is very odd to me, and I'll get to that later. But I was noticing the script of this episode is written by John Truby. I don't know if you know who that is. I have only heard about him, but way back, like it seems like every time I watch a YouTube video where someone is giving writing advice, they will quote a book written by John Truby, and that's the only thing that I've heard of him. But apparently he has consulted like over 1,000 movie scripts, and this episode was written by him. So when I saw his name, I immediately was like, oh, okay. Also, Vince Vaughn, who listeners of this podcast will recognize as being in an episode of Sex and the City, he is one of the students at this school. I saw his name in the credits, and I probably would not have recognized him if I wasn't looking for him. But after a few scenes, I was like, okay, that's Vince Vaughn. I don't know if you ever have this thing. Like, I watched the movie years ago. I watched the movie Kroll, which has like 1,500 characters in it, and I knew that Liam Neeson was in that movie. I knew that was one of his earliest roles, and so every time a new character would show up, I would ask myself, "Is that Liam Neeson?" And he just shows up in the movie like without any fanfare. It's just like, oh, he's there in the background, and so that was kind of the same thing I had here with Vince Vaughn, where and Johnny Depp too, because Johnny Depp, like, half of his face is covered in hair. And so if you didn't know you were watching an episode of 21 Jump Street, you probably wouldn't recognize Johnny Depp. But Vince Vaughn is here. And also another link to a previous episode of this podcast. This series was created by Stephen J. Cannell, who was the creator of Riptide. I think Stephen J. Cannell must have been involved with every TV series from the 1970s, because looking at his Internet Movie Database, like I don't even know if he was actually involved in any of the actual episodes of 21 Jump Street, but he's listed as the creator. And so it could be that he just made a living like, okay, now I'm going to create this show about these cops who look like they're 30 infiltrating a high school, and then I'm going to create this show about, it's kind of like Magnum P.I., but with a robot sometimes. And so like, he must have just created like 15 different shows in the 1970s.
He's a creator in the same way Stanley is.
Yeah.
It's a lady with beam powers, and she's called Spider Woman. Go.
Yeah, that was a good approximation of Stan Lee. I don't. This isn't a good introduction to 21 Jump Street, I don't think, because it doesn't really give you a good look into the characters who you are normally following episode to episode. And if you're into, like, if you want to see these characters actually doing investigation, you're not getting any of that in this episode. And so it wasn't for me. I would say, though, if you are a big fan, then you might enjoy this change of pace for the series.
So I guess, like, as far as like my thoughts on the episode go, I actually liked this episode quite a bit. And I was surprised by that, because when 21 Jump Street, the film, was coming out, I was still in high school myself. And I remember when it was coming out, there was this like, well, they're making a comedy movie out of 21 Jump Street because, I mean, come on. I mean, the premise of 21 Jump Street is just completely silly. Like, oh, it's just like the only thing noteworthy about this show, 21 Jump Street, is that it had Johnny Depp before he was like a huge star, and he was just a teen heartthrob at the time. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess it's just kind of like a lame show that everyone's kind of forgotten about. And I was so I guess like maybe it was low expectations and like, you know, mild dread of actually having to watch this for 44 minutes instead of 22 minutes. And when I actually watched it, I was actually impressed, and I would say I had a good time watching it. I mean, it's not like an enjoyable episode. It's basically, the Joker movie or Taxi Driver or Falling Down or any other number of like the bad guys, the main character kind of movies. But for what it was, I think, as far as like network television that's trying to address some kind of like serious subject, I think, it could have been done a lot worse. You're right, though. I think that not the best starting place for 21 Jump Street. I too have never seen an episode before, and in researching the show, Sherilyn Fenn from Twin Peaks did guest star on an episode. So I could have picked that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I actually just put this on my. I guess should be said. I'm not 100% responsible for picking this episode. I just put it on a list of 20 possible contenders, and you picked the number 17. So
I
if
did,
you want
yes.
to, get technical about it, it's good. We both have some responsibility in this.
Yep.
I put this on the list specifically because of Robin Lively, which she was in this episode a lot more than I thought she would be. She was in it more than Vince Vaughn was, but also you're right, Vince Vaughn. He was in an episode of Sex and the City we talked about. By the way, I just wanted to say thanks again for watching those 4 episodes of Sex and the City. But I bring that up because the guy who plays Mike in this episode, he was actually apparently in an episode of Sex and the City as well.
No way.
I didn't recognize him, but that was also well over, I think like it was like 10 or 11 years after this episode of 21 Jump Street. Yeah, there are a few things here and there that are kind of odd choices, but they only felt like odd choices to me once I was aware of like who the actual like core cast of 21 Jump Street is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's not a slight against the episode. That's a slight against me, because the only person who would reasonably be watching this in 1989 is someone who has watched 21 Jump Street before. So yeah, we can get into those. But I'll say, like, generally speaking, I was impressed by this because it's basically a story about an incel school shooter, but it's I don't know, like it kind of like approaches its subject matter with a level of grit. There's a level of like kind of authenticity and realism, and it does sort of feel like I would say, like, I know we usually talk about this at the end of episodes where we talk about television shows. This does make me want to watch more 21 Jump Street. It makes me curious to know, like, how they tackle like teen issues and how they relate to the teenage experience and whatnot. And, and so, like, what drives a teenager to try to be a criminal or something like that. Maybe that's all exactly like this episode where, boy criminals just want the girl or whatever. But in isolation, I thought this was actually a pretty good episode. So those are my thoughts. But so let's get into it. I'm sure you will point out all these flaws with it, and then I will like it less by the time we're done talking.
So, the episode immediately starts. You got this character, Mike. We're cutting back and forth between he is riding a bicycle and we see somebody getting in a car. It's a woman in a car and she's like backing up. And then like we keep cutting back and forth between these two and you're not sure what's going to happen. And then he pulls a ski mask down and you're like, uh-oh. And then he stops by the car and there's a man getting out of the house right by the car and he's walking down the steps. And then this kid on a bike shoots the woman in the car and then rides off on his bike. And then we cut to a classroom, and this teacher, he's calling roll, and then he calls the kid's name, Mike something, and Mike says, here. And then it's like, bum, 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 theme song. And like, that's a big reveal that it was a high school student. And I don't know, as far as the theme song goes, that might have been the only actual time that I laughed in the episode. I don't know if you've ever seen the Adult Swim skit, Too Many Cooks. It is a 10-minute skit that you can look up on YouTube. It is well worth your time. It is one of the funniest things. I will go back to that every so often just to give myself another giggle. This theme song had some very strong Too Many Cooks vibes for me. If you haven't seen Too Many Cooks, I don't feel like that's a spoiler or anything, but this theme song felt like it was like a joke. Like we at one point we see the cops, like they each have like playing cards on their head and are like playing poker with each other. And then at one point they all like do finger guns at the ceiling at the same time. And I'm like, this looks like a parody of like I don't know, I can't think of a good example, but like if you saw a parody of like some kind of TV show from the 80s, this would be a parody of that. But it's real. It's an actual theme song. And so that was the only time I actually laughed. But then we're back in the show and we're back in the classroom and we see, this one teacher, I think they're talking about the Iran-Contra affair. And then across the hallway, there are these kids in this hallway and Mike can like look right out the door where he's seated and he sees them and they're all like getting rowdy, playing hacky sack or something in the hall. And then Mike's teacher goes out and he's like, what's going on here? And they say, Mr. Tompkins didn't show up today. So then we cut to the crime scene. And then Mike is riding by on his bicycle. And so this crime scene has been there all day. I have no idea how long it usually takes the police to leave a crime scene, but I guess for a full, 7-hour school day, they've been here, looking for evidence or whatever. Mike drives by. on his bike. And then he's at home and he's acting weird and creepy. And I should go ahead and point out, I actually had to pause and take a good several hour break watching this episode just because of how uncomfortable this guy made me. Like you mentioned, the Joker movie, that's based, very much inspired by the movie King of Comedy, which is, I believe Scorsese did that movie.
Yes, yes.
And that's another movie where like I was a captive audience. I watched it in a classroom setting in college. And if that was a situation where like I was at home and it just showed up on TV, I would have turned it off like 10 minutes in because like the main character of that movie I really wanted to stop watching him. Like he was so awkward and I just wanted to do like anything else, like go, pull my fingernails off with pliers or something like that. And this guy kind of gives me that same vibe. Like you said, incel school shooter, and that's the perfect description of this, where like everything about this just made me uncomfortable. And so he's at home and he's like moving his hands like he's like very animatedly talking to somebody, except he's alone in the room. And then suddenly he just starts like throwing furniture and I'm like, what is going on? This episode has a lot of this weird creepy music that would have been right at home in Twin Peaks. And while I love the music in Twin Peaks, like, there's that part in early in Twin Peaks where not Donna, Audrey is dancing in the R&R and it's playing this weird creepy music, and it's like it's getting you into the feel of this series and it's helping you get to know like this is the kind of series you're watching. This episode, the soundtrack did not work for me. It was and part of it was because there were several ways we could have watched this. I watched this on YouTube, but there was also a couple of streaming sites. It was like Pluto TV and Tubi, Tubi. How did you watch it?
Oh, YouTube.
Okay. I don't know if you had this. For me, I felt like the sound transfer was kind of bad. Like the dialogue would be kind of muffled, and I would have to turn it up to hear what they're saying. And if I turned it all the way up, I could hear them. But then the music would kick in, and I'm suddenly like having to turn it way back down so that I'm not deafened by the music. And so there's at least one very crucial scene in this episode that I actually missed some very important dialogue because I had turned it down earlier so that I wasn't, hearing the loud music. But I wasn't feeling the music here, even though I feel like it is very similar to Twin Peaks music. So he's at home, he's like throwing stuff around. Then we're back in the classroom. And if any point, if you need to interrupt me, go ahead. Because right now it's like I've literally broken it down by scene. But we're back in the classroom. And then one of the students says that this killer shot at Mr. Tompkins and then shot the wife. And missed Mr. Tompkins and shot the wife. And Mr. Tompkins is a teacher across the hallway. And if you've seen the episode, that's not true. If you just watched the scene less than 10 minutes ago, you know that Mike only shot the wife and then drove off. He didn't make a shot at Mr. Tompkins.
Okay. So it's a little like the way they shoot that scene is they shoot it from a wide angle, like from a distance, and Mike does pop off two shots.
Oh, okay. Well, I'd have to go back and look, but I thought that he like stops right by the car and her window is open and he like just points the gun like right in the car. And I don't think Mr. Tompkins was in the car yet.
I need to go back and look. I thought he was in the car. But I don't know. Maybe he wasn't. I don't know. Maybe that's just the fibby alibi that Tompkins was giving the police.
Yes.
One moment. I need to close my window because there's a bird that is driving me crazy.
Oh, okay. While you're closing that, I was just going to say, I think, Connor, you are onto something because I think that the spoilers for the episode, Mr. Tompkins is the one who hired Mike to kill his wife. You find that out later in the episode. And so I think what the episode is doing is saying that Mr. Tompkins told the police that, the guy tried to shoot me and then he missed and he got my wife. Or he missed and then he shot my wife. I do think that is what the episode is doing. I didn't catch the 2 bullets, but I would have to go back and carefully examine that scene again. But after I watched the episode the first time, and there was a whole lot of like weird stuff like this, where I was like, this doesn't make sense. I'm not quite catching what's going on. And that was like just one thing. But then Johnny Depp, he comes in and he's a new student, and immediately Mike just does not like Johnny Depp. And I guess I missed like what was his reason for not liking Johnny Depp, because the whole episode Mike wants to be popular with all of the in crowd, and so he does all this stuff to try and get them to notice him. And so there's like one moment towards the end of the episode where Johnny Depp's character is telling a joke, and then Mike is just like staring daggers at him like, how dare you, like they like you and they don't like me. But like as soon as Johnny Depp like comes in and sits down, Mike is staring at him like he doesn't like Johnny Depp. And I like, this is before Johnny Depp has talked to any of the other students. So I was a little confused why Mike like instantly hated Johnny Depp.
So this is something I feel like I can maybe like speak to. This is just me pulling something specifically out of my own experience. So like, if this, if somebody watches this and have the same experience you did, I don't blame you. But like it worked for me, and the reason why is because basically I know somebody. I knew somebody who was basically Mike, but who didn't kill anybody that I knew of. And the person he hated was my brother. And my brother, me and my brother, my twin brothers, you could almost say we are nerds, geeks, or whatever. We enjoy films and comic books and, typically geeky things. My brother works at a comic book shop. You know what I mean? And there was this one point where this guy, who I will just call Mike, so to make things easy, but this Mike guy, he was friends. He wanted to be friends with me because he had a crush on somebody I was dating at the time, and so he wanted to be buddy with me, and he wanted to talk about how much he hated my brother with me. And I was like, "What are you talking about?" Or like, "Why are you talking about this with me, dude?" Like, like this is my brother. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But like, it was a very odd thing, and this person behaved in a very similarly off-putting, strange way, and so like that made me, I'm kind of like trying to make light of this whole kind of sad situation, but I guess it gave me a little bit more sympathy to the Mike character in this episode. Obviously I don't condone any of his actions and his like kind of weirdness, but like I understand it, and I feel like there is a level of sympathy, if not empathy, in this episode towards him. But I guess like I've been speaking a little vaguely. So when Mike sees Johnny Depp, like they're both kind of emo. The thing is, Johnny Depp looks like Johnny Depp, and I think just sort of like, I'm an outsider. There's only like one shot for, there's only like there's only enough room for one emo outsider to get in with the popular crowd, and you just showed up and you look like Johnny Depp, so I friggin' hate you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he kind of maybe sees it as a rivalry right off the bat, and like that just sort of speaks to just how like confrontational and combative and like survivalist he just naturally is. That's what I was getting from it. But if someone watches it and kind of has the same thing you did, where they where you're like, what's this guy's problem? Why doesn't he like Johnny Depp? Johnny Depp has literally done nothing to you, and so you're just glaring daggers at him already. I get it. Like I've known people like Mike, and it felt believable to me. But yeah, right. I can understand why it would be weird.
That's a fair. I'm glad you brought that up, because like for me, like when I was in like, let's say 7th grade, and I was a weirdo, and like I didn't feel like I had like 2 friends and everyone else was like part of the in crowd, and they're all like the enemy because I'm a weirdo, and so they all must be awful, and like that was definitely not true. There might have been like 1 or 2 people who were like part of the popular crowd who were like mean, but like it's like when we talked about the movie Carrie, where like John Travolta is talking with the Queen Bee, whoever she was, and she says, "I want you to do something to Carrie White," and he says, "Who?" Like, chances are, like, if you're in high school and you think that everyone hates you, chances are, this may not sound great, but they probably don't even know you exist. Like, they have their own thing going on, and so like they're it's not me against the world. If you're in high school and you think it is, it really isn't. And so like when I was in 7th grade, if a new student came in halfway through the year, and then this new student like pals around with the people who you don't like, then you're like, oh, I don't like this guy. He's now joined the enemy. And so like, if this was a younger group of kids, I could maybe buy it. By the time I was a senior in high school, I was well past all that. And I like throughout most of the senior year in high school, I was just the weird, quiet kid. Like I wasn't like Mike, but I just kind of sat off to the side and just did my own thing. Like I was well and beyond past the point of needing to find a group to fit in. Like it was just like, 340 days left till the school year's over. Like I'm counting down the days. Like, I wasn't looking for the, enemies to make. Like I felt like that was just a childish thing that I would have done when I was in 7th grade. And so like, and part of it is like, I mean, we know these characters are old enough to be driving a car. So they're like junior year or senior year of high school. And part of the problem is like, incidentally, I really kind of think the premise of the series is laughable. I am sure there has been like one instance in history where a police officer embeds himself in a high school, but like when you are casting 30-year-olds as your high school students, it's already like, I'm like, okay, like you've got this adult who joins.
I have to say, it's also hilarious that like I think in this episode or maybe by this point in the show, they've realized that not the guy who's not Johnny Depp, like he can't pass for a high school student.
No.
So basically they just have him as, oh, I'm the substitute gym coach.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up because this is I'll get to that in my notes later because I did bring up something about that. But yeah, but I think I could buy the premise of Doogie Howser where a 15-year-old is a doctor. I think I could buy that a little more than like a 30-year-old goes to high school and says, hey, I'm the new student. No, you're not. You're a substitute teacher. Which class do you need to go to? Like, but anyway, yeah. So you're probably right that like Mike sees Johnny Depp as a threat. If it was me, I probably would have written something where because then they're out in the hallway and I think Robin Lively drops her books and Johnny Depp like helps her with it and then he just like walks on. Like Johnny Depp isn't like, hey, you want to go see my Mercedes outside? It's brand new. It still has the new car smell. You know what I'm saying? Like he's not like hitting on this girl that Mike has a crush on. And so like if it was me, I would have done something like that. But I can also see where you're coming from, where most people who are not me were probably had a different high school experience and they were probably looking for, if you're not my enemy, then you're my friend or whatever. So then Mike
though, like you're right though. Like I think like when you're talking about most people in high school are John Travolta from Carrie, or most popular people are like they got their own thing going. They probably don't like know everybody. And I think like you, I had a similar high school experience. Like I was not a popular kid. I was not an outsider. I was not like, one of the weird kids that like people, gave like a weird, like, raised eyebrow when they're playing like Yu-Gi-Oh at the top of the steps. I wasn't that kid, but I was nowhere near the popular crowd. But you're right though. Like I don't know. You had said something earlier that I thought was very accurate, and I wanted to like clarify that. Like I agree with a lot of what you said in terms of like how high school students are. Like I think that and even like the popular kids in this are just pretty normal, right? When Mike is kind of freaking out that like he doesn't have like a rose to put on the grave. Robin Lively's like, it's fine, dude. You know what I mean? Like, it's cool. Or like, he'll buy tickets for White Snake. He's like, Robin Lively, we got to go to White Snake. She's like, I mean, if I would have known, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like that, all those little details, like to me, that was so accurate of somebody who's like overthinking how like social dynamics and social acceptance works. Because it's like, there are some like popular kids that are like bullies that are horrible, like the Nancy Allen character in Carrie, who are just evil. I'm sure they exist, but hashtag not all popular kids. I don't know. Like, and so I think like this show doesn't, like, I thought this episode did an okay job, and I will say, yeah, the premise of the show is insane. And I just want to say, I think that's why I was as impressed with this episode as I was because like I thought it like legitimately had some kind of compelling drama, and it's the show about high school cops. So yeah.
well said. I co-sign all of that. So then Mike goes out to the parking lot and he wants to buy quite possibly the ugliest truck I have ever seen. And this is my personal bias coming in. I think all vehicles from the 1950s looked awful. I think if you were around in the 1950s, you should be ashamed of yourself. This truck just looks disgusting. I think I don't like the design of those vehicles from that era. But Mike sees it and he's like, I want to buy this truck. And the not Johnny Depp guy, he's like, I'd rather sell my pancreas than sell this truck to you. And then like right after that, these two become like BFFs. And so this was another instance of I must have missed the dialogue or like I had turned it down because I thought he said his name was Coach. But then like every other scene in the episode is playing these two like because at one point later on Mike he buys his own car and then he says to Coach, he says, do you want to go ride with me? And Coach is like, yeah, pop this baby open, let's go for a spin. And they like go and hang out in a parking lot somewhere. And I was thinking, if he's supposed to be a coach, this is really weird behavior. Like if I was a coach and a student invited me to go for a ride in his car, I would say, no, that's inappropriate and you're a weirdo. And if I was a student and a coach was okay with going for a ride with me, I would say, no, you're a coach. That's inappropriate behavior and you're a weirdo. Like, I thought, so the whole episode, I was thinking that he said, my name is Coach. Or like, people call me Coach because I'm like, I don't know. And so like, if I went back and turned the volume all the way up in that scene, I probably would have heard it a little better. I don't know if you had the same problem I did with the sound transfer.
I did not. Yeah, I don't know. Were you wearing headphones or?
I was not. No, I just had just going raw dog, and I could not. Had a little trouble with some of the dialogue, and then the music would be just like really loud.
Yeah. I will say you gave me Arrested Development flashbacks. I really wish now he said my name is Judge.
Yeah. Was that Scott Baio or?
No, it's by the way, the kid does look like Scott Baio, but Mike in this episode. But
yeah.
No, like it's like the talking magazine ad that says my name is Judge. and I can't remember who that is, but
I've seen that clip. Scott Baio played Mike Law's Law Blog.
No, Bob Blah Blah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I have not seen all of Arrested Development, but I've watched bits and pieces here and there, and that's a gem of a show. But yeah, so and then so I guess after that, I can't remember if it's the funeral scene and then it's the him buying the car, or if it's the other way around. We get a couple of scenes. The order isn't too important. He goes to buy the car. He goes to buy some White Snake tickets so that he can go on a date with Robin Lively. And like you said, like the tickets are for a specific concert on a specific day, but he doesn't ask her, are you available on this day? Like, I know, like, and this is one of those things like where the weird, creepy guy has this fascination with like the girl next door, but he probably doesn't know anything about her. And so, like, I don't know if he's ever had a conversation with her before. And so, like, for all we know, she doesn't like Whitesnake. Like, there's a number of things that he probably should have done before buying the tickets. But, like, it's one of those situations where he feels like the world is against me. Like, I bought those Whitesnake tickets, and she didn't want to go on in the concert with me. And she's there with a friend. And this reminded me, I don't know if you've ever seen the animated movie Over the Garden Wall.
Oh, I've not. No, my little brother loved that.
Oh, okay. Are you planning on seeing it?
No. I'm sorry, Levi. I'm sorry.
No, there's basically the movie is it's like The Wizard of Oz, but a little bit darker and creepier. Like these two humans are in this weird fantasy world, but you don't know that they come from the real world for like most of the movie. And then you get an entire I say episode, it's like a 7 or 8 minute episode that's a flashback to right before they came to the real world. And there's this guy who has a crush on the girl that the main character has a crush on. And you've been hearing about this Jason Thunderberger guy, and you think he's like a Flash Thompson alpha male type, but Jason Thunderberger like kind of wheezes and he talks real funny, and he's like golly gee, I'd really love to hold hands with Jessica. And so like that's the romantic rival. And then at one point they're all like sitting in a circle, and I think they were doing a seance or something. And then he's holding hands with Jessica, and she says, you can let go of my hand now. And he's like, oh, okay. And there's this other girl who says, hey, Thunderbreaker, you can hold my hand. I don't care. And so like this girl in this episode who's not Robin Lively, she's like, oh, I'll go into the Whitesnake concert. And I was reminded of, I did a terrible job explaining it, but it reminded me of Over the Garden Wall. All one of you who have seen that movie will understand what I'm saying. But so
no. I'm sorry. I had my mic muted. No, I that is funny. I can definitely see how that relates.
Okay. But then so then Johnny Depp, he says like, I want to buy your bike, and Mike is like, no. But then so he had already thrown the bike in the dumpster, I guess to hide the evidence, because everyone knew that the murderer was riding a bike. And so now that he's bought a Camaro, he doesn't need a bike anymore. And so Johnny Depp says, well, I'd like to buy the bike from you. And he says, no. But then Mike goes and looks in the dumpster and can't find it. And at that point, I wasn't sure if the trash had already been taken away, or if the police have like secretly taken the bike out to investigate, like if that's part of their investigation. And that, I don't think the episode really answers that question, but I was kind of curious about that.
So that was actually one of the elements of the show I liked, is like he is, so like, I don't know, I guess like I do have a level of sympathy for this character. I guess like pity or something, because it's like I could have, like, I know like I could have been like this guy. Like I've been in high school where like obviously like I got this, crush on this one girl, and I just want her to notice me, and obviously like that level of like, desire is always going to be unfulfilled, right? Unless you look like Johnny Depp or someone. But like and then newsflash, I didn't look like Johnny Depp in high school. But I think it's just always funny, like when we have like conversations about like, movies or TV shows or whatever media about like strange people who are like oddballs that are, on the fringe of society. I love this comics kid because like you will always have the response of, well, geez, doesn't this guy know if you just like did it normally you'd be fine? It's like, comics kid, you're not a weirdo. You are a very rational, normal human being, and I'm very happy about that. But I think like as far as like the weirdo who's like just like kind of, I wouldn't call him like an obsessive stalker type, but he is like on his way to being like that, where he murdered, I guess like, I'm sorry if I'm just kind of blowing up your kind of scene by scene breakdown, but like
no, that's fine.
He murders the teacher's wife because the teacher had paid him to murder his wife for $2,000, a measly $2,000, and he wanted this money so he could get a car and he could get some Whitesnake tickets. And it's such a like, it's like the same mentality of buying a lottery ticket, where you're like, well, it's $2. I only need to put down $2 and I could win hundreds of millions of dollars. And then all of a sudden you've spent, $500 on lottery tickets and have nothing to show for it. You know what I'm saying? And it's very short-sighted. And then you have with this though, it's like he like wants a cool car to impress the girl. Yeah, but you don't have a job. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but he's not thinking about that because he's not, you know what I mean? Like he's like so desire driven because he's so unfulfilled at home and in life, and with no friends and whatnot. And I need to get Whitesnake tickets. And like every time he goes back to that safety deposit box, he's taking more and more money out. He needs to get $1,500 for a new car. But like now, like, I mean, when he's sitting there in bed and he's like thinking about like Johnny Depp offering to buy the bike from him, I'm sure like Johnny Depp is inspecting it because he's a cop or whatever. But I'm sure he's like, in my head, I was just kind of figuring he was going back to the dumpster to try to find his bike so he could sell it so he could have more money, because he's realizing I have no money for gas. I got no money for like any other scheme. Like, you know what I mean? Like I got nothing. Like, crap, I need that money. And so he probably, and then like it's just kind of like him being short-sighted and kind of stupid and throwing his bike away, which actually I say that might be the smartest thing he does in the entire episode. But like, because he threw it away, like he can't sell it now because he threw it away in a dumpster. The garbage, that was days ago. The
garbage truck already came for that thing. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like it's one of those things where there's like a cause and effect here that, somebody who was thinking like, oh, that's just bad karma. It's not bad karma. It's just like he's not thinking 5 steps ahead. He's thinking 1 step ahead. He's only thinking with like his desire and not being thoughtful or rational or anything about it. He's being way too like neurotic about it. And like, I don't know, I thought like as far as like a representation of a person who was like this, that is very accurate.
Mm-hmm. And I wasn't like, oh, this is a deal breaker. He's going through the dumpster, and I need to know why. I wasn't like I need every step of this. I was assuming that he told Johnny Depp no, and then he thought, wait a minute, that could be some extra money, and then he went and couldn't find it. But I guess with how the episode goes, you're not really clear on how much time has passed since the woman got killed. Like, has it been 2 weeks or has it been like a day? And so like I wasn't sure if the dumpster had been emptied. But yeah, that I do think if you're into like, I won't say cerebral, but if you're into very internalized stories about like a character slowly going mad, this is probably going to be an episode that will be very up your alley. Those types of stories generally are not for me, so that probably wasn't working as much for me as it would be for other people. Did you enjoy that aspect though?
Yeah, I guess I did. I like that scene where he's laying in bed and then he goes to the dumpster. Like, I was kind of, like when you put those two together, I kind of like, oh yeah, like it retroactively makes me think about times in my life where, like, in like when I'm like 21, I've made some stupid life decisions and I'm under the gun as far as like money is concerned, and I'm like, what am I going to do for money right now? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, I should probably just like, I have this in my car, I could just sell that, right, and have $20. And it's such a limited term thinking, and so it's like, I don't know, like it's one of those things where it's like, I get why it doesn't really work for everybody, but for like me, like it's one of those things where while you're immediately watching that scene of him laying in bed, you don't know what he's thinking, but then with the very next scene, you can like realize what he was thinking in the scene before. So yeah, I do like that stuff.
So then we get what's possibly one of the most important scenes of the episode, and I didn't have the volume turned all the way up, so this is just as much on me as it is like, I don't know, maybe if the loud music was just down a little bit, I would have been fine. But so about 22 minutes in, Mike goes to talk to Mr. Tompkins, and then Mike says, I have this feeling someone knows I did it. And when I first watched the episode, I didn't catch that he said that. I thought he said something to the effect of like, he goes in and he's like, I feel like there's something I could have done. And like Mr. Tompkins is like kind of sort of consoling him, but that's essentially a confession. But then we get another confession revelation scene later in the episode, and I feel like the two of them don't work with each other. Because this one, the one that's 22 minutes in, he says, like, I have a feeling someone knows I did it. And then Mr. Tompkins says, that's a natural reaction. And he says, I don't think we should be talking right now. And so, like, and then we've got the next scene. Mike is in class, and he's looking out the door, looking across the hall, and Mr. Tompkins sees him. So then he closes the door, and then he pulls the window shade down. And so, like, I think what they should have done is in this scene where Mike says, I have this feeling someone knows I did it, I think they should have rearranged that so that his dialogue was a little bit more vague, and that you would get the big revelation 33 minutes in that Mr. Tompkins paid Mike to do it. Because there's, like I said, there's a second scene about 33 minutes in where Mike comes and he says, I'm not your wife. You can't get rid of me that easily. And it's like, bum, 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 Mr. Tompkins hired Mike. But you've already had a scene 11 minutes earlier where Mike said in front of Mr. Tompkins that I have a feeling someone knows I did it. And so if you're trying to go for this really big revelation that Mike was hired, like, you only need to do that scene once. And so I thought this was really weird, where they either needed to change the dialogue in the first scene or just rearrange, like just get rid of that scene entirely. I don't know if you have any strong feelings on this, but that one really confused me when I was going back and like looking at how all this played out.
It didn't really read to me like a revelation scene. Like the revelation felt like the scene at 22 minutes, like you said, where it's actually like a quiet reveal where he just kind of starts saying like, I think somebody knows I did it. And then Mr. Thompson's like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, get out of here. Like, we can't be talking right now. But
that scene at 33 minutes where he's like starting to blackmail Mr. Thompson, that felt like a blackmail scene to me and not so much a reveal scene, because what I think the scene or two scenes before that scene were at 33 minutes, Mike is talking with the kids at the table, and they're like kind of playing like a game of like, okay, if you could phase somebody out of existence, who would you phase out of existence? And then the question is, how much money would you the first question is, okay, you can phase someone out of existence, and there's like no penalty for it. Like, who's it going to be? Mm-hmm. And then after that, like Johnny Depp's like, yeah, I wouldn't do that to anybody. The question is, okay, but like, how much money would it take you to, phase someone out of existence? And then Robin Lively's like, I wouldn't do it for any less than $10,000. And then Mike's realizing what a short-sighted chump he is. Mm-hmm. And then he's like, oh, I'm a cheap hitman, right? Mm-hmm. And now because he's like low on cash, now he's blackmailing Mr. Thompson, because he's kind of a short-sighted chump. Am I Rich Evans today? Oh my word. But yeah, so that's what I kind of picked up from that.
Okay. I admit that I'm kind of an idiot, because when I first watched the episode, I did not catch that he said, I feel like someone knows that I did it. And I think maybe, I don't know, like, I watched this on YouTube, so I didn't pay any money for it. Like, I'm not saying like, I got ripped off or whatever, but I did feel like I didn't fully understand what was going on until 33 minutes in, where he said, like, that was when I finally picked up on, oh, Mr. Tompkins paid him to do it. Like, that was when it all clicked together for me. This kind of reminds me of the movie Silver Bullet that we talked about, where like there's a scene where Big Ed has a dream that everyone in town becomes a werewolf, and then like 2 or 3 scenes later we find out that he's the werewolf, because like, and I like, technically it kind of looks like maybe the episode or the movie was telling you he was a werewolf earlier, and like this kind of feels like a very similar situation to me, where it's telling us, and then later you're right, the next scene is Mike saying I want more money. But that was the first moment where I picked up on, oh, Mike was paid to do it by Mr. Tompkins. Mm-hmm. So that was like, that was the big, like, I think, I guess I wasn't paying enough attention, or the dialogue was like, he was kind of, because it was a quieter scene where he was talking with Mr. Tompkins the first time. But,
and I guess if you have issues with like the audio mixing, then I could imagine why that scene would be a little hard to hear.
Yeah. Other than that, I didn't have a whole lot else to talk about. We do get like where Mike pretends like he's been working at the ice rink or the ice skating rink so that he could pay for the car. And then Vince Vaughn says, hey, can we have like a party at the ice rink? And then he rents the ice rink from the guy. And then the guy comes up to him and is like, I need extra money, and basically blackmailing the kid. And then he tells everyone like, this kid doesn't work here. And then Mike later goes and is like, guys, I'm really sorry I lied. I really wanted you guys to like me. And then that's where Johnny Depp is like telling a joke and everyone's laughing. And then he's like, this was where I was, once again, I was a little confused. Does he want to kill Johnny Depp, or does he want to kill Mr. Tompkins?
I don't know. Like, I guess like that's kind of one of the problems I have with the episode, is just sort of the resolution. So, and I guess really the whole 21 Jump Street element of the episode. So maybe I wouldn't like the show, but yeah. So in the one hand, as a piece of an ongoing show, it makes sense to me. Of like, okay, we're gonna have this high concept episode. The criminal, we're gonna have it from their POV, and it's gonna sort of be like Taxi Driver, whatever. And but he befriends one of the undercover cops, and he sort of has a rivalry with another one of the undercover cops. Like, ooh, it's sort of like a shoulder angel, shoulder devil kind of thing, where the one guy is like encouraging him to do the right thing, but his bitterness towards Johnny Depp is going to have him, do the bad thing or whatever. I don't know what the investigation was even looking like. I don't know what it seems like. They had no evidence on this kid up until but sorry, up until he shoots at him, at nighttime. But like Mullet Man is there. It seems like Mullet Man, or you see, this is where it's weird because like Mike sort of makes the first move with Mullet Man, right? And does him making the first move at Mullet Man, does that like raise a red flag for Mullet Man in terms of the investigation, where he says, "Hold on, I'm posing as a substitute coach, right? And all of a sudden, this kid who gives off weird vibes is like asking me about buying my car, and he's showing up with a new car, and he's talking about wanting to fit in with the cool kids. Like, if I'm a cop, maybe that raises a few red flags for me, right? Especially if I'm in an hour-long network television show. Like, that raises red flags for me, so we can have this solved by 45 minutes. But like, I'm a little curious how the investigation breaks down from the other side of it, because I'm sure, like, as a writer, you would need to have the other side of it figured out. Like, what clues did Johnny Depp have? Like, I kind of figured this episode would end with a Perry Mason style, like, the two guys sitting in the like room explaining what how they did it, like, and how they solved the case. And that's how you get Holly Robinson and Dustin Nguyen and like them in the episode, because they're in the opening credits. They don't do that. Part of me is kind of happy they didn't do that, but the other part of me is still kind of curious how their investigation should get down. But I think they ultimately made the right decision, because this is more than anything, this particular episode is the story of kind of Mike, and they I think see that to the end pretty well.
Yes. I by the time shortly into the episode, like, I'm like, oh, it's called Mike's POV. So, it's going to be, the whole thing will be from his POV. We're not going to get a scene of them investigating. So I think I was okay with that. But then, like, there at the end, Mike is doing stuff. And I'm still, even though we have been following Mike throughout this entire episode, I'm still a little confused about what he's doing. Because at one point, he follows Johnny Depp. And Johnny Depp, like, walks up into a building. And someone says, "Hey, Hanson." And I looked, and his character's name was like Tony or something Hanson. And I'm assuming that was his real name. And so I think Mike followed Johnny Depp to the police station. And that was like, he was reporting in to like this is where we're at in the case right now. And then Mike goes to talk to Mr. Tompkins again. And he says, like, "Hey, sorry I tried to shake you down for more money. Now I know what I need to do." And then he goes home. And he calls the operator and says, "Hey, can you call this line? I think the line is like broken." And then like the phone rings, and he says, "Oh, okay, thank you." And then he tells the mom, he's already talked to Johnny Depp, and he says, "I need help with my homework. Do you think you could come over to my house and help me with my homework?" Johnny Depp says, "Sure." And then the kid tells the mom, he says, "Hey, I need to go talk to Mr. Tompkins at school and help him with the school newspaper. If Tom comes by, will you tell him that like that's where I am?" And the mom is like, "Yeah, sure." And so then he goes to the school, and he's waiting in the classroom. And at that point, I'm thinking, okay, is he planning to shoot Mr. Tompkins just so that like nobody knows that like just in case Mr. Tompkins gets cold feet and tells somebody that he hired a kid to kill his wife? Or is he trying to lure Johnny Depp there to the school so that he can shoot Johnny Depp? Like, he'd tell his mom, "Hey, I had to go meet Mr. Tompkins. Will you tell Johnny Depp that I'm there to school?" And then Johnny Depp will go there. Because like someone starts to walk in and he shoots, and then Johnny Depp and Mullet Man are both there. And so that was where I didn't necessarily need a POV from the main characters of the show, but I was a little confused at that point on what Mike was doing, even after watching things from his
I would
POV.
agree. Yeah, when he, I guess, realizes that Johnny Depp is an undercover cop or whatever, he sort of seems to have like a level of peace and understanding about everything that I don't understand why he feels it. I also like, I get that Mike's whole thing is that he's like he's short-sighted. His plan is short-sighted to the point of like, if you're just a horny teenager, like, I get it. I'm gonna spend all this money to like get noticed, and it'll be worth it because in X amount of days I gotta kiss the girl. I have no long-term plan. I got no job. I got no, but I gotta kiss the girl. And that makes it worth it, right? Even though it's very short-sighted and kind of stupid. Like, I kind of get that if you're a stupid teenager. If you're a person who's trying to cover their tracks and you're thinking, like, I'm trying to, like, break down his plan in my head. He's like, okay, invite Johnny Depp to go to my house. I'm at my house. I sort of like contrive a sort of situation where I have like an alibi for my mom that she says I'm at the school because Mr. Tompkins called me.
Mm-hmm.
But then, I mean, all that takes is like literally 4 seconds to like pick up a phone and talk to the operator and figure out who called what at what time.
Yeah.
Mr. Tompkins didn't call this house. It was just the operator. Oh, okay. He was, I see what he did. He did a thing where he was trying to make it, seem like to his mom that he received a phone call from Mr. Tompkins, when in actuality he was just, making it, tricking her or whatever. And so, but then he goes to the high school and waits for Johnny Depp there to shoot at him. Does he want him in a secluded place? If he wants him in a secluded place, why the high school?
Yeah.
Also, why did he go through all the trouble of inviting Johnny Depp to his house? Was that just to kind of get all the cops to go there? If all the cops are going to go there, he already told his mom he's going to go to the high school. Like, you know what I mean? And so it's like there's like a level of like stupidity in that where like I don't even understand what he like his long-term game is. And it's like I understand he's kind of a dumb teenager who's like in over his head. On some like level though, like there needs to be like some kind of like stupid justification. Like it's a dumb excuse, but like in the moment it seemed like a good idea if you're a dumb teenager. That's not there. And like that's the kind of like that's you said like if you are kind of more into like introspective kind of like stuff where characters aren't really like talking about what their plans are, it's kind of more internalized. Like I do like that stuff, but it's stuff like this at the end where a lot of movies that try to do that do lose me. The first time I watched Taxi Driver, like I was with it up until a certain point, and then I feel like the main character of that movie just kind of loses me because I can't relate to him anymore. And there's a few other movies as well where like I'm watching it and I feel like they just kind of lose me.
Yeah, and this is something that maybe would work better in prose, where you are actually inside his head and then you're getting to follow each step, and then you would know, okay, this is when he actually has a good plan, and this is when he's just letting his hormones get the better of him, and this is where he's not thinking very straight because he's a high school student who just wants to get laid. And so like maybe it would work better on paper, but when we're watching it, for me, I'm with you, it kind of loses me at a certain point.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of like other movies that are like this that have been more recent that like, cause this always seems to happen when people make a movie about like a person who goes crazy, where like I'm with them and I can relate and sympathize with them up until a certain point. And like I feel like almost uniformly they lose me.
Yeah.
Joker lost me. Taxi Driver, I think, lost me, but that's like, admittedly, it's been a long time since I've seen that movie. And there have been like others like before Joker, like that have been like from 2016, 2017 to 2018 that have done the same. So
I don't think I've seen a whole lot of movies like that. There's one from like 2009, 2010. You may have seen it. It was called Law Abiding Citizen. And it wasn't exactly like those that you mentioned, but it had Gerard Butler and Jamie Foxx were in it, and Gerard Butler's family had died, and like you feel bad for him because he lost his family, and then he kind of wants to get revenge, and then there's a certain point where you're like, whoa, that was a step too far. But it's not the psychological type of movie like those others that you were mentioning, and so I don't know if that's quite the same level of film that you're talking about.
Yeah. Of course I'm Googling this, and I'm like, movies where the bad guy is the main character, and they're all like, oh, I bet you never thought of Ferris Bueller as the bad guy of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It's like, oh, get out of here with this crap. I've heard the theory that Grandpa Joe is a mooch and Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I got it. So sorry. I guess I'll just have to not figure out what these movies are. I guess that should just say that these movies don't really stick with me. So.
All right, that's a very fair assessment, or very fair point of view. That was all I had.
Nice. Nice.
That was I did unintentional. I did not mean to say that.
You'll have to add a rim shot there.
Yeah. That's all I had to say about this episode. Did you have any other thoughts on it?
Hey, that Johnny Depp sure is a dreamboat, right? No, in all honesty, like Robin Lively is fine in this. She just kind of has to. I guess what I was most impressed with by this episode is there is a level of naturalism I was not expecting when you watch, say, the opening credits, and how like you had mentioned, like those feel like almost a parody of like an '80s opening titles credit sequence.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, like Vince Vaughn and Robin Lively and all those other popular kids are just basically kind of giving the same performance, which is just sort of like unassuming. It's not exactly the kind of performance that it's like, oh, this is my time to shine. It's kind of more of like they're trying to do a certain thing. But as far as our Twin Peaks connection goes, she was fine. And I did just finish watching the back half of season 2, where she has like a weird Southern accent, and that's not in this, and that was pretty cool. She still looks almost exactly like Kate Mara, though, and that's kind of funny.
Oh, yeah. I don't think I ever picked up on that when we were watching Twin Peaks, because her hair she's got a different hairstyle here than in Twin Peaks. But here, I didn't realize who I thought she looked like, but I was thinking she looks like somebody. And now you said that, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's who it is. I thought she did a good job.
Why don't you put a fake, terrible blonde wig on her, and maybe you...
I think she did a good job playing like the normal, like just normal. Like I said earlier, he probably doesn't know anything about her, and so she as a character is not allowed to really have any characteristics. And she does a good job making this character feel real, even though like she is paper thin as far as characters go. And I mean, that's probably true of like all the other characters here too. But since he is trying to get with her, she's more to focus than the others. But because we're from his point of view, we don't know, like, she works in the newspaper for the school newspaper. But other than that, we don't really know much about her. And I think she does a good job working with what very little she is given.
And I will say, and like her kind of being like thinly characterized is kind of the point, because like you said, he doesn't know anything about her. She just, she's hot and he wants to be with her. I had something else I wanted to say, but I can't remember it now. Oh man, whoops. Oh well, played my cards all wrong. Oh well. But what are we talking about next week?
Oh, okay. Well, this our next episode will be in the month of October. Oh
my God.
Incidentally, I kind of want to hire Mike to go after everyone who's like, the rest of the year is Halloween season. Ha ha! I don't make the rules. Ha ha! I've got my Halloween decorations up for 65 years. Ha ha! And I'm just like, I hate you all. Like, stop it. Like, let's just celebrate Halloween. For a month, that's fine. Like, I also hate it when Christmas music starts like before November. Like, I hate all of that, but Halloween especially, like people who are like, oh, I just can't wait for hoodies and bonfires and pumpkin flavored, and I'm just like,
second that first leaf hits the ground, it's Halloween season.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm a hypocrite because for the month of October, you're going to have Halloween stuff or, horror stuff on this channel. And so this is another blind pick. I am picking an episode of the television series Wayward Pines, which I have never seen before, but I know it looks creepy and weird. When you Google it, there's like a monster hand holding a human hand. So there's some kind of like weirdness going on there. This episode is titled The Truth. And I don't even know what season that is, but you can watch Wayward Pines on Amazon Prime. You do have access to Amazon Prime, I believe. The Twin Peaks connection is James Foley, who was a director on episode 24 of Twin Peaks. So this is another like behind the scenes look at not one of the actors or one of the main people that we think of with Twin Peaks, but that episode was Wounds and Scars. So 17th episode of season 2 and 24th episode overall. But that was directed by James Foley, who I believe is the director of this episode of Wayward Pines. So The Truth. And This will be another interesting one because I don't believe you've ever seen this series either. So we're both going in cold. We don't know the premise of Wayward Pine, so we're going to have to play catch up with that while also watching this episode. But it looks kind of spooky, and so I can't wait to bust out my hoodie and light up a bonfire in my room while we record this podcast and drink some hot chocolate, pumpkin flavored.
Spice latte.
Yep.
I will say my mother watched this show when it aired. I know the pilot was directed by M. Night Shyamalan.
Really?
And from what I understand, it is very influenced by Twin Peaks. So I think it's really cool that you picked this because I legitimately forgot it existed. Mm-hmm. I think, like Twin Peaks, it only ran for 2 seasons.
Okay.
And I know that, but no, I think it's cool that you're picking a James Foley pick. I actually watched the James Foley episode of Twin Peaks like just in the last week. And so I was actually thinking, oh, wow, I should probably pick a James Foley thing. Maybe 50 Shades Darker or 50 Shades Freed. I don't know. Maybe one of those. But no, I wouldn't put myself through that again, let alone you. But this is awesome. I'm glad you picked this.
I believe he was also the director of Glengarry Glen Ross, which I have not seen that, but if anyone here has, I assume you have, maybe.
I have, yeah, actually.
Okay, I'm aware of the movie. I know it's a thing. I just haven't seen it, but I wasn't sure if you knew who James Foley was, other than I didn't know how much of a director, how much of a name that he was known. But
hey, he is a celebrated television director and studio hack. All right.
Okay.
I say that with affection. He's made some good movies. He's made some bad. He's like a Joel Schumacher. You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah. And some people might say, "Oh, that enough said." But I don't dislike Joel Schumacher. I think that's a perfect. I understand exactly who this man is now. Now that you've said that, that paints a beautiful picture. I get it.
I mean, hey, Glengarry Glen Ross is a great movie. James Foley makes Glengarry Glen Ross. Joel Schumacher makes The Lost Boys. Sometimes a 50 Shades or a Batman and Robin gets in there, and you're like, yeah, what can you do? They're just doing what they're being asked to do.
Yeah. So that's what we will be talking about in a couple weeks. I believe that's all that I have to say here. This podcast went almost, a good 15 minutes longer than the episode itself. I wasn't sure how much we'd have to say here, but if you don't have anything else, Connor, I don't either. So we will see you guys in the future. In the meantime, have a great rest of the day.